everybody, this is Kristan from Lion Learners East Midlands, and this is the lovely Theo and his best friend Oreo. Now, in our Animal Cam sessions this week, we have been looking at habitats. So a habitat is the place where a group of plants and animals live. And there are a huge variety of habitats across the globe that all have very different conditions, different types of weather, different climates. And the animals that live in those habitats are adapted to live there, as well as the plants that they live amongst. And this week we've focused on 3 habitats, so you've been able to meet some animals that come from the desert, as well as some that come from the rainforest and some grassland creatures yesterday, but there are many more habitats all over the globe. Today we're going to focus on food chains, which is the way in which the plants and animals that live together in a habitat are dependent on each other for food and for energy. So all living things, all plants and animals, need food in order to survive. They need energy. And plants are at the base, at the bottom of all of our food chains. Plants are amazing and very important. Plants like this kind of sad looking parsley plant. We were hoping to be outside this afternoon so that we could show you some of our lovely grass and some of the other plants, but it's incredibly windy, so we have moved inside. So plants like this parsley plant are at the bottom of our food chains, and they are amazing. And that's because they don't need to eat food. They create their own food, their own energy, and they do this by using energy from the sun and water in a process called photosynthesis, which means making with light. So plants do need to have light in order to get their energy, but they don't need to eat. They don't need to go to the supermarket and get food. They don't need to go hunting. They make their own food. So plants are at the bottom of a food chain, and every animal on the planet is dependent on plants. Without them, the rest of us would be stuck. Plants are absolutely spectacular. And so above them, in a food chain, you get animals like the very stompy bunnies here, who are wondering why they're in the living room and not in the garden, that eat plants. So rabbits are herbivores. You've learned all about herbivores and seen some of our lovely rabbits over the last few weeks. So rabbits eat plants. So they are dependent on mainly grass. So the grass creates its own energy with water and light, and then the rabbits eat the grass. They're herbivores. And then somebody else eats the rabbit. So very often in a British food chain, it's Mr. Fox that eats the rabbit. So a bunny food chain might look a bit like this, with the plants at the bottom, the lovely grass, and the plant is called the producer because the plant produces all the energy that everybody else depends on. And then you have the rabbit, which is eating the plants. And so sometimes he is called the consumer, the primary consumer, the first one to eat the plants. And then you have Mr. Fox, who is a predator of the rabbits and really likes to eat them. So, but the fox is dependent on the grass, because without the grass there would be no rabbit, and then he would have nothing to eat. So those creatures are linked together. So this is an example of a food chain, one you might see in the UK. Let's see if Theo and Oreo have no grass in here. They do have some hay, which is dried grass, but they might like to eat our parsley. Rabbits love parsley. So we can kind of see a food chain in action. I bet by the end of this video there will be no parsley left, because you love parsley, don't you, boys? Let's move on and look at a completely different food chain, one that isn't a British food chain at all. And this food chain involves the beautiful corn snake. This is Autumn. Autumn is a Carolina corn snake, and corn snakes come from the southwestern parts of the USA. And very often in modern times, they find themselves living in a habitat that's not entirely a natural habitat. She says, I'm going to come out and explore. Let's lift her up. If I can do this with one hand, she's a rather heavy snake. There we go. We'll leave her down there because I can't hold her with one hand and hold the camera with the other. So they live in a habitat which is pretty much man-made. A lot of them find themselves living in the farm fields. So their farmer is growing cereals, things like corn and wheat, so that he can sell them to make cornflakes and bread and things like that. And you find a lot of corn snakes in the USA. There we go. That are living in that environment. So they'll hang out in the farm buildings for a snooze, and then they will go hunting around the cornfields for their food. And their food is little rodents, mice, and all other small rodents that are eating the farmer's corn. So let's cover autumn up for a moment, and we can have a look at their food chain. So at the bottom of their food chain, there will be cereal plants like these that the farmer is growing so that he can make food for human beings. And then, so that's the producer, the bottom of the food chain. And really, the farmer wants all of the food for himself or to sell for us to eat. But that's, in reality, that's not entirely what happens. There will be an awful lot of small rodents, just like these guys. So this is why I've covered autumn up for now, that are eating the corn. This is Bill. Let me sit down with Bill. Bill's going to pretend that he's a mouse from the USA for today. He isn't actually. He's not a mouse at all. We'll talk about that in a moment. But for now, he's going to be the mouse. So there'll be lots of small furry things like Bill hanging around in the cornfields, eating the farmer's corn and all the rest of his crops. And then there would be Autumn, the lovely corn snake. Dare I? Let's look at Autumn. There she is, with Bill on my knee. A bit risky. Who would be cruising around the cornfields, hunting around for rodents like him. So really, let's come back to Bill. Autumn is the farmer's friend. She is preventing all of his crops being eaten by these little guys. So a lot of people don't like snakes very much, but actually they are an important part of the habitats they live in. They are rodent control, or control of whatever other creatures that they eat, that there would be too many of if there weren't snakes about. Theo's just making his thoughts known on being inside. You'll be outside later. But that's not the end of the story. For the rabbit food chain in the UK, we don't have many predators we don't have large predators bigger than a fox. So their food chain is quite short. Apart from people who sometimes like to hunt for foxes, there isn't anybody else up above them because we don't have large predators in the UK. But actually, this food chain doesn't end with the corn snake. Let's put Bill back for a moment. Corn snakes get eaten by other things. So after the corn snake on this food chain, there might be another larger snake. King snakes like to eat corn snakes. They're a bigger American snake. Also, birds of prey like to eat them, and all kinds of other things might eat them too. They also sometimes, unfortunately for the corn snakes, are killed by people who mistake them for a venomous snake. In actual fact, they're not. They're harmless to people. They're constrictors, and they squeeze their little mice and then swallow them. But they have no venom, and they're completely harmless to people. But sometimes they're mistaken for a snake that might be venomous. And so sometimes, in actual fact, people will kill corn snakes too. Okay. Let's cover her up. Very quickly, I'll tell you a little bit more about Ben and his brother Sunflower. Bill, rather. This is Bill. Bill and Ben, the flower pot men. They're almost identical. This one is Bill. And they actually are African soft-furred rats. We met sunflower in a previous video. They actually come from the rainforests in Africa, and they are not eaten by corn snakes because they're in a completely different part of the world, but they are eaten by royal pythons. They are the favourite food of a royal python. And so their food chain involves a lot of them being eaten by royal pythons, as well as other things. And they themselves are omnivores. They eat all sorts. They might like to eat some of this millet, actually. You want some millet, boys? And so we might have wanted some millet, apart from the fact that Theo's frightening us a little bit because he's very cross about being inside. Okay, that's it. In the wild, they usually look pretty much like Bill, but without his little white blaze. They're brown. You don't get them looking like sunflower because he would be spotted much more easily by predators, so he wouldn't survive in the wild. But as pets, they can be all kinds of colours, just like a lot of our other small furry pets. Right, let's cover you two up as well. And go over here and look at another food chain. This one comes from Madagascar. So, in here we have some of our Madagascan hissing cockroaches. You've met these boys before. Are you feeling hissy today? A little bit. There was a little bit of a hiss, but it's not as loud as the rabbit. And so these only live on the island of Madagascar, and they are a creature that's called a detritivore, which means that they eat all sorts of stuff that is rotting. They're part of nature's cleanup crew, and they mainly vegetation. So they will sometimes eat the bodies of other creatures that maybe have unfortunately passed away, but mostly they eat vegetation. So they would eat leaves, rotting wood, fruit, probably not grapes. I'm pretty sure that you don't get grapes in Madagascar, although I'm not certain of that. But they would eat all those sorts of things. They live on the forest floor and they eat everything that falls from the trees. So at the bottom of this food chain, there is plants again. So rotting wood from the trees, leaves from the trees, fruit, all sorts of different things actually. So not just one particular plant, all sorts of different things, everything that you find on the forest floor. And then hanging around on the forest floor, there are cockroaches like these, and other creepy crawlies too, that eat all of those things that the plants are giving to them. Actually, they eat things that other people don't want to, other creatures wouldn't want to, so they're cleaning the environment up. And then above them, just like all mini beasts, invertebrates, they have a lot of predators. And one of their predators would be, the lovely Thistle, who has gone back to sleep. Thistle is a very sleepy creature. Hi, Thistle. He says, oh no, I am awake. Okay, let's put Thistle on his little sleepy pouch so we can look at him a bit better. This is Thistle, and he is a lesser tenrec hedgehog, which is actually not a hedgehog at all. Tenrecs are spiky shrews that live in Madagascar. Hello. And they are mostly insectivores. So they like to eat all kinds of creepy crawlies, including hissing cockroaches like these. And he has incredibly sharp teeth, so he can crunch through their hard exoskeleton with his big, strong jaws. So their food chain would look a bit like this. So at the bottom you've got the plants, the producer, and then you have the consumer, or for Thistle, the prey, which is their creepy crawlies, and then the predator. Now you might have spotted that the predator, or the secondary consumer, is not a tenrec. That is a lemur. And that's because sometimes things are not so straightforward in our habitats. A tenrec is not the only creature that eats a cockroach like these. They get eaten by all kinds of other things, including lemurs. So in actual fact, we could, let's see if I can do this, I might have to move my card actually, so I don't knock the rats off the table with my bottom. We could put Thistle here and have another little arrow, and then there would be an arrow that came all the way around from Thistle and came back to the plants as well, because sometimes he likes to eat fruit. And then also, so do lemurs. They might eat fruit too, like this. And there would be other creepy crawlies somewhere here, because Thistle eats all sorts of creepy crawlies, not just cockroaches. He would eat absolutely anything. He's not very fussy. He particularly loves insects more than fruit, but he'd eat all sorts of different ones. So it would end up looking very much like a web. And I'm not going to talk too much about that today, because that's kind of moving on to when we look at the Key Stage 2 curriculum. So when we do that, we'll look more about food webs and how sometimes our habitats, our ecosystems are much more complicated than the ones we've looked at today. So we'll come back and look at that again. Now Thistle, who's going for a little wander around the room, he's been very lively this afternoon, which is nice. Last time we filmed him, he was sleepy. Isn't the top of his food chain. He's pretty tiny, isn't he? He would be eaten by birds of prey, by snakes, and by a creature called a fossa, which is a wild cat that lives on Madagascar, and possibly other things too. So he has these lovely spikes, which help to protect him, makes him much more difficult to eat. But even so, he would have quite a lot of predators, wouldn't you, Thistle? It's nice to see him up and awake. Now that the weather's warm, he's got a lot more energy. Haven't you, Thistle? Right, so I think we'll leave it there for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning some things about food chains. If you want to do some more finding out, the BBC Bite Size website has some amazing things for Key Stage 1 food chains. There's little videos you can watch and some games you can play, so you can do some more learning all about food chains. Next week, we are going to take a bit of a break from our curriculum sessions because it's half term. Let me see if I can follow Thistle. But there may be some other things going on our website. I'm not sure about that at the moment. So watch this space, keep an eye. There might be some things that we do just for fun next week, but the curriculum link sessions will be back the week after, once school term starts again. So bye from me and Thistle and all the other creatures, and we'll see you soon.